Hey guys, it's Jess with Go and Flow Yoga. We're going to go through some of the most basic poses that are in almost every vinyasa flow class that you would go to or do online. We're going to do a basic sun salutation, and then I'm going to show you some other common poses like Warrior One, Warrior Two, and some other things just so that you have proper alignment. And once you learn the alignment in a lot of these poses, then you can kind of take those into every other pose you might try and apply what I'm teaching you here because most of the alignment techniques that I'll be showing you apply to almost every single pose in some type of way. So we're just going to dive right in. So get some comfy clothes on. Whatever, let's get started. So first you're going to start in mountain pose or Tadasana, and that is literally just standing here. There's just some ways to stand better to help your posture. And the things that I'm going to teach you here are very important because from Tadasana, you do every pose, right? So I'll say things in other videos like have Tadasana feet or things like that where you need to find your Tadasana in the pose that you're doing. There's just some elements within Tadasana that are very important to apply to most poses. So we're going to start from the bottom and work our way up. So starting with the feet, the way that you stand in Tadasana is actually you're going to be using your toes as whiskers, and you're going to be balancing on your feet as if there's four corners of each foot, right? So, and you can stand either together or apart. I'm going to teach you with your feet apart or hip distance apart because when yoga was originally being made in the early 1900s, it was being made by guys that were smaller, skinnier, and built differently than we are today. When yoga was first created, or the asanas were originally created, they taught it so that your legs were together, your feet were together. For me personally, my knees don't like it when I stand with my feet together, right? And I also feel kind of wobbly. Whatever, it's your preference. If you want to stand like that, great. If not, you're going to be like me and you're going to stand hip width apart. To find hip width apart, it's pretty easy for most people. You can find the bony protrusion of your hip, right? It's right here. Then you're going to go down to where the crease is, like where you'd be sitting, where your crease is, and then go in just a little bit, right? So that is where your actual hip joint is, and that's where I want the middle of your feet to be lined up. So right about there, right? So that's how you start with the feet. Keep your toes as whiskers and balance on the four corners of your feet. You can kind of try to find your four corners by playing with your weight a little bit. Kind of rock back and forth, front to back, whatever it takes for you to find that good center point of your feet to really feel the balance, your weight distributed evenly in those four corners of each foot. And like I said, use your toes as whiskers. They're just to catch you if you start falling forward or whatever. They're just like little whiskers. Moving up to the knees, it's important in almost every single pose in yoga to have a micro bend in your knees. Starting in Tadasana. So what I mean by micro bend is you don't want to hyperextend your knees by like pushing them back, right? And you're like locking them. You don't ever want to do that. That risks injury, especially when you're practicing these poses and exerting a lot of energy. So the micro bend is literally just bending them a little bit. And the way that you know that you're doing this action is actually your kneecaps kind of move up when you do this. I'll kind of show you. I don't know if you'll be able to see very well, but I'm going to try to show you. So when they're locked and relaxed, they're kind of down. And as soon as I micro bend them, watch what happens. Did you see them go up a little bit? So this is locked and relaxed, and then micro bend. They kind of move up just a little bit. You play with your own knees and watch that happen. And that's how you know that your knees are actually very activated, and that's what you want. Because then that also is going to trigger the right muscles in your legs to be working at all times. So then moving from the knees, moving up towards the pelvis. This is an important part because this is what protects your lower back from having any type of injury during any of your poses. So I'm going to stand to the side so you can see what I'm about to do. So a lot of times people have a posture that isn't the best, and it's because we all work jobs that either you stand for a really long time or you sit for a really long time. Our bodies are never really practicing good posture because we're never really focused on it. Well, luckily, yoga is here to save the day. So the more you practice this, the more it's going to feel natural. And what I'm getting at is the actual movement of the pelvis is going to, instead of naturally a lot of people, this is kind of, dramatic, but a lot of people have this type of posture where your knees are locked and your butt kind of jets out and you get this what they call hyperlordotic position of your back, where your spine is actually like hyper curved, right? And that's what we want to try to prevent, because when you're exerting a lot of this energy and using your muscles and doing a lot of weird movements, you don't want pressure or anything bad to happen to your lower spine, like your sacrum and everything. So in order to protect that, you're actually going to tuck the tailbone. And if you've ever been into in a real class or done online classes, you'll hear that a lot. Tuck the tailbone. And this is what that means. Instead of being in this natural, jetting out position, you're actually going to take your pelvis and kind of tuck it, right? So the action is, if you know where your tailbone is, feel your tailbone, and from here, kind of tuck it under, right? Feel that motion. And then you're actually, on the front side, if you can think of it from the front side, your lower belly, like right underneath your belly button, it's actually going to be kind of a motion of like tucking in and up, right? So you go in and up, and that kind of causes the pelvis to turn up, your tailbone tucks under, and this is very dramatic. I don't want you to do this crazy like dramaticness with your pelvis, but this is just to get that feeling, right? That tucking feeling. That's what you're going to be aiming for. So instead of this, you're just going to tuck it just slightly, right? And eventually, over time, the more you practice that feeling and that motion, your muscles will get used to that, especially if you practice yoga every day. Your muscles will get used to that, and this will become your posture. And that's one of the best things about yoga, is that it does help your posture. And this helps protect your lower back. It helps you not have lower back pain every day. Because I know I used to struggle with that a lot before I started doing yoga. So this has really helped my posture, really helped my, just every day. I don't feel this lower back pain all the time anymore. So anyways, keep that tailbone tucked just slightly so that you're in this kind of like middle ground, right? Don't be like hyper weird like this, and don't be like hyper weird like this. Just be right in the middle. It's just slightly tucked, and it kind of, then you start to feel all your muscles really engage, right? So then from here, I'm going to turn this way so you can see me now. So we've got our four corners of our feet. We're hip width apart or together, whatever you prefer. You've got your knees micro bent, and your tailbone is slightly tucked. All of your muscles are engaged in your abdomen, just slightly, not like overly, just slightly, so that you know that you're engaged. And then from here, we're going to open our chest. We're going to open our chest, and we're going to really work with the shoulders, right? So to open the chest, you're actually going to be lifting your ribs away from your pelvis. That's the main action here. So a lot of us, slug around like this because we're tired. Well, from here, you kind of lift your ribs up, right? And that causes your chest to lift. That causes your chest to open. And another thing to help open your chest is working with your shoulders. So instead of being like this, because we're used to sitting and typing at our desk or whatever we're doing, instead, I want you to kind of slug them down and back. But I don't want you to go too far back to where your shoulder blades are pinching. You don't want that action either, because that's obviously unnatural. But just find that middle ground. They're not shrugged up to your ears. They're down, slightly engaged, slightly back, and your chest is open. The other thing I want you to do is find the middle ground for your head. Because a lot of us work with computers, we're constantly jetting our head forward. So then it's unnatural. So try to push it back a little bit and see if you can find that middle ground. Look in a mirror, whatever you have to do. Find that middle position so that you actually feel that alignment and see the alignment in the mirror. And that's where you're going to want your head. And I'll also always be reminding you during a yoga practice to soften your jaw, soften your tongue, soften everything between the ears, because we don't need our face for yoga. That's where you're allowed to relax, right? So relax your jaw, relax your tongue. Let it just be soft and relaxed. Engage everything else, but in a soft way, right? So you don't see me like, right now. Everything's just softly engaged so that I know that I'm using it. I'm thinking about it. I'm actively thinking about it and using it. So from here, you want to think about all the actions that I just put your body in and put those motions into each of the other poses that I'm going to be showing you. And this is what I mean. So for the next pose that you would be doing in your sun salutation would just be arms overhead. So it's just as simple as that. Your arms go overhead, which they can be with your hands together over your head or apart. It just depends how you feel in your shoulders and everything. It's totally up to you. For me, I like my arms apart. My shoulders are really sensitive, I guess. So the way that you're going to put your arms up, again, the thing that you're paying attention to the most is the shoulders. You don't want to be super hyper and freak out and put your shoulders up and your arms up and be like, yeah, I'm arms overhead, yeah. No, relax. Push your shoulders down, back a little bit, keeping the chest open and keeping your chin back a little bit, maybe even raising it a little bit. If you're used to like looking down all the time at whatever you're looking down at, the cash register, whatever, try to raise it a little bit and see how this feels. Sometimes people start sweating in these positions, and that's because we're not used to this normal, good posture. That's okay. That's what yoga is for. So from here, you would be doing a forward fold. I'm going to turn my body. So the forward fold is just like in Tadasana, you're going to be balancing on the four corners of your feet. Don't obsess about straightening your legs because you'll get there eventually. Don't obsess over it. If you're a beginner, you might be looking like this. That is totally okay. Everything is okay as long as you're getting what you need out of yoga, whether that be the flexibility, the strength, trying to better your posture, whatever it is. So when you're in this forward fold position, again, your hip width apart, and you're trying to put your weight in the four corners of your feet again. Try not to, you're not like leaning over so that you're balancing on this part of your foot or like this part of your foot or anything like that. Just try to even it out and trying to keep that. I know it's hard to like imagine, but trying to tuck your tailbone, just even if you're thinking about it, it's automatically kind of doing it. Obviously, you don't want to obsess over that because you're bent over. You can't like obsess over that. And so when you're in this position, you're also going to be tucking your chin a little bit. And this really helps the spine. I mean, you're in this perfect forward fold, and your spine is really feeling it, right? So then from here, we're going to do even more action with the spine, and we'd come into a halfway lift, which is literally just lifting your torso halfway up and looking forward. So when you lift up, and you can use your hands on your shins to support yourself. Again, keeping the balance in the four corners of your feet. And as you're lifted up, you're trying to keep your back straight, right? So by helping you to keep your back straight, you can actually, again, think about tucking your tailbone. It helps straighten your back. So you don't want to be like hyper like this. And you definitely don't want to be like this. Just be that middle ground. Try to tuck that tailbone a little bit, keep that straight back. This really extends the spine. It's really good for you. And then again, we'd come into a forward fold. And then from here, we would come into what's called Chaturanga Dandasana. And to get to Chaturanga Dandasana, you'd actually start in a high plank. So normally you're doing this at the front of your mat, but obviously for show and tell, I'm doing it in the middle of my mat. So normally when you're at the front of your mat, in your forward fold, you're going to plant your hands, and you're going to throw your feet back to the back of the mat. And where you want to find your wrists is right underneath your shoulders. If you have to look in a mirror, do it. You know what I mean? If you can't figure out where it's at, just on your mat, look in a mirror. Even if you're standing at the mirror and just going like this, get used to where that feels, where you see your arms when you're looking at them, right? Because that's important. That alignment is very important. So in this high plank, this is where we can get down into Chaturanga Dandasana. But I don't want you to stay in Chaturanga too long because it exerts a lot of energy. It's like halfway into a push-up, right? So again, in this, I want to go back to this high plank because I want your back to be straight again. I want your whole body to be long and straight. So instead of like sinking down because you're feeling tired or pushing up because you're not sure where your body's at, try to find that straight line in your body. And then from here, you're going to lower down so that your elbows are actually going to be at a 90-degree angle. And again, if you need to look in a mirror, do it. It helps. So at this 90-degree angle, and you're not going all the way to the ground, except we will right now, just for show and tell. So that was Chaturanga Dandasana, keeping the elbows at a 90-degree angle. And then from that 90-degree angle, that's when you're going to push up into downward facing dog. Now, there will be times that you're in Chaturanga that your teacher will tell you to come all the way to the mat. And that's because they're then going to tell you to do probably cobra pose. There's certain poses that you want to do from Chaturanga, and there's certain poses you want to do from all the way on the mat. And it's to protect your spine, right? So if we're in Chaturanga, then we're going to come, if we don't go all the way to our mat, if we're in Chaturanga, then we want to come up into upward facing dog. So let's get there together. So from high plank down to Chaturanga, put your feet on the ground and push up into upward facing dog. Now the tops of your feet are pushing into the mat so that your legs are actually raised off of the mat. So the only things touching the mat are your hands and the tops of your feet. You can push your toes into the mat even, that helps. So this is more of a pose, not of a back bend, but of actually engaging all your muscles. So from here, you're going to actually push your shoulders back and down to keep your chest open. And then this is when we roll back into downward facing dog. Now, to protect your spine, you can either put your knees down, come into like a tabletop position, and then push back and up into downward facing dog. Or if you feel comfortable and all of your muscles are engaged, then you can push straight from upward facing dog and roll back into downward facing dog. It would look like this. So either way, you just want to make sure that you're pushing through your sit bones to come up using your abdomen muscles, not your lower back or anything. So downward facing dog is obviously one of the most common poses in yoga. You use this in almost every vinyasa class you do. And this pose is really just pushing the sit bones towards the ceiling. You're drawing your navel towards your spine, and that also helps keep your back straight. Again, kind of thinking about the tailbone being slightly tucked, it's the same motion. Keeping your chin and your head and your neck kind of soft. You don't need to engage those. And you're pushing your heels into the floor and trying to straighten your legs. If you can't, if you're a beginner, that's totally okay. This is how I started, right? You get to a point where you're going to be able to maybe, I still can't, but maybe be able to flatten your feet onto the mat with straight legs. My ankles don't work that way, so I don't think I'll ever be able to do that. So again, this is downward facing dog, keeping your back straight, your legs straight if you can, and really engaging the abdomen and the arms and the legs. So those are some of the most common poses in your sun salutation. You'll go through those almost every vinyasa class. Obviously, there's variations. I'm going to show you one of the variations right now, actually. So instead of going from Chaturanga to upward facing dog to downward facing dog, we're actually going to go high plank to Chaturanga all the way to the mat and then into cobra pose. Cobra pose is a pose that's more about a back bend, whereas upward facing dog is not. Like I said, obviously it's a little bit of a back bend, but that's not the main, that's not like the main thing you're trying to get out of upward facing dog. Cobra pose, though, you are using your back muscles to pull yourself up, and it is the beginning. It's like a great pose to start with if you want to work on any type of back bends in your practice. So I'll show you what that looks like. We'll start in high plank. So with your wrists right under your shoulders, and then just lower all the way to the mat slowly. From here, your hands should be pretty much right underneath your shoulders. If they're not, figure it out, right? So then from here, keep your elbows in. Don't let them freak out and go out. Keep them in. Push them towards you, towards each other. And then from here, you're going to try to use your back muscles primarily to lift yourself up into like a baby cobra. It looks like this. So I'm really engaging my lower back muscles, and I'm trying to push my legs together. They don't always come together, but I'm trying to push them together and keeping my feet on the mat. Okay, release. And again, try again. You see how it's really the back muscles? That obviously makes you engage your abdomen a little bit too. Release. Now to come into a full cobra, it's the same thing except you're just pushing all the way up with your hands instead, so you're not really engaging your back muscles as much once you're all the way up into it. And this is to really start working towards your back bends even more. Now, if you're not used to doing back bends or anything like that, don't worry about trying this, but I'm just showing you. So you're kind of like pushing yourself away, like your hands away from yourself, so that you're really trying to bend your upper spine to get ready for some back bends. Again, you're pushing your shoulders down and back to keep your chest open, trying to keep your legs together and your feet on the mat. And that's, a full cobra. Okay. Let's come into child's pose to kind of neutralize our spine. So the best way to neutralize your spine is to actually keep your legs open so that your torso can fall in between your knees, right? And this actually allows, instead of keeping your legs together, because this kind of rounds out your spine. So to neutralize it, which downward facing dog is also a neutralizing position for your spine, but this is one that's like a full resting neutral position. So knees open, they're, basically towards the edge of the mat on either side, and you just put your torso in between your knees. And you can have your arms outstretched above your head. And this is where you would just really relax and feel the neutrality of your spine. Feel any tension release. Feel tension release in your neck. Good. Okay. We're going to come into a couple other poses that are pretty elementary. And they can be as deep or not as you want. And I'll show you what I mean. So we'll start with Warrior One. And typically to get into Warrior One, you've kind of gone through that flow that I originally showed you from Tadasana, forward fold, halfway lift, Chaturanga, upward dog, downward dog. And then that's when you go into other poses, right? So let's get in downward dog together. To do that, start in like a tabletop position, so you're on all fours. Your knees are hip width apart, and your hands are actually going to go just a little bit above the shoulder line, right? So you're not like perfectly 90 degrees everywhere. And this is going to help you get into downward dog properly. So tuck your feet and push up and back to come down. What's cool about this pose also is that it's considered an inversion because your heart is above your head. And inversions are awesome. I live for inversions. They are great to help your mood, to help your energy level. They're just so good for so many things. It helps with circulation. If you've got period cramps, this is a great pose to come into. So many things. So keep well in this position. I know I do. So anyways, from here, let's take our right foot and put it in between our hands. So you'll be in like this lunge position, right? From here, we'll come into Warrior One. You're going to have to balance a little bit. You're going to plant your back foot, not at, you don't want it to be like your foot's at a 90-degree angle or anything. You're just pivoting it just enough to be able to come up. So from here, raise up. You're balancing here. Push up through your legs, through your feet to come up into a Warrior One. I'm going to change sides just so you can see better what I'm doing, but you can stay where you're at. So what's going on in the back leg? The foot is pointed kind of like a 45-degree angle, or it's kind of, everybody's body is different, right? My ankles don't work very well, so mine is probably going to look different from yours, right? The main point is that you want your knee to be pointing in the same direction as your toes, right? So everything on me is pointing this way in my back foot and my back leg. So keep that there. Again, Keeping that micro bend in the knee. You don't want it to be like locked. Keep that micro bend so that it's engaged. And the front leg, you want to keep a 90-degree angle here, and then keep it in line with your ankle, right? So everything is in line. Now, if this is too deep for you, coming from a downward facing dog, just bring your back foot up a little bit. Enjoy your poses. There's no need to try to force yourself into these poses if they're uncomfortable, if they cause you pain. That's not what yoga is for. By doing this practice all the time, you'll eventually work into deeper poses without even thinking about it. It becomes natural at that point because your body's ready. Don't force things. I've learned the hard way on that. So anyways, once you have that alignment, the next thing I want you to think about are your hips, right? Warrior One is considered a front-facing position. So you want to energetically think about turning your hips towards the front. And again, this is going to be where you might need to change what your foot is doing. My ankle is very weak, like I told you. So sometimes I have to adjust in Warrior One. And don't force your hips to the front. I'm not saying like awkwardly twist everything in your leg or anything. You're just energetically thinking about it. It's just the motion, like just that slight shift keeps your hips trying to be towards the front of the mat, right? So that's the goal of this. Again, just like in Tadasana, I want you to tuck your tailbone just slightly, not overemphasizing that at all, but just to keep that, because you don't want to be like doing this type of thing or anything. You want to be centered, even, neutral, and everything like that, and you're protecting your lower back by doing that also. So then by doing that, you can then feel the difference of the muscles engaging in your legs in this pose, right? So from here, your arms go up, and you can put your palms together or keep your arms apart, totally up to you. And it's just like in Tadasana, when you raise your arms overhead, same thing, keep your shoulders down, keep your chest open, maybe raise your chin just slightly. Stay here for a minute and just think about all of your alignment that I just pointed out. Got the 90-degree angle in your knee is in line with your ankle. Trying to energetically think about your hips facing forward, tucking the tailbone just slightly, keeping your shoulders down and back, and your chest is open. That's great. Now we're going to swivel open to a Warrior Two. So just open your arms to the side, and then we're going to take our foot, and then we are going to turn it so that it's facing perfectly perpendicular to the front foot, right? So I know you guys are on your right foot is forward, so I'm just doing this for visual sake, right? So this is Warrior Two. Your arms are straight out. You keep the same alignment in your front leg, so you still have that 90 degrees here. Your knee is in line with your ankle. And again, adjust so that you're comfortable. And again, keep the micro bend in the knee. And this, your back foot is pointing straight out, so that you're perpendicular from your front foot. And where your feet are in relation to each other, it's actually a straight line from your front heel to the back arch of your foot, right? So draw a straight line there, and they should be in line with each other. And then from here, you're gazing over your front arm, and trying to keep your arms straight as possible. And again, dropping the shoulders. You don't want to shrug. This is where we keep most of our stresses in our shoulders. Let them relax down. Even if you have to energetically push them down, do it. So this is Warrior Two. Again, keeping the tailbone slightly tucked to engage the right muscles. Keeping the chest open. Good. All right, go ahead and release. Let's come to a neutral spot. Roll it out. Play with this on the other side too. Bringing your left foot forward first, coming into Warrior One and Two on that side. Think about the same alignment cues as I just gave you for your right foot forward. It's the same thing. And if you take all those alignment cues and apply them to so many positions in yoga, it will help you. Thinking about like a lot of balancing poses where you're just balancing on one leg, or I don't know, you're doing all sorts of crazy things. Always think about that 90-degree angle. Anytime you're bent over, think about this. Don't do this, but if you're ever doing this with your weight on this leg, that is not good. That is how you get weak joints and cause for injury, so be careful. That's why I'm going through these alignment cues, is because they are so important to have a successful yoga asana practice. Because if you don't know alignment and you aren't familiar with what's healthy for your joints and what's not, you're definitely lining yourself up for some type of injury. I have experienced many injuries, not only just from yoga, but from a lot of things. And so then that's why I have weak ankles. That's why my wrists, I'm trying to work on strengthening my wrists. It's all related, and yoga teaches you a lot of that. So be nice to your body, keep it aligned, keep it practicing to strengthen all the things that you might be struggling with. And you should have better luck in your everyday life, just overall, in the way your body feels and the way your mood feels, all of that. If you guys have any questions about alignment in any pose, if you're trying to get some weird pose down, you're not quite sure of the alignment, and maybe Google tells you 5 different things, let me know. Message me, call me, whatever you want to do. I will be happy to walk you through the alignment of any pose. I guess that's really it. Those are the main poses I wanted to show you, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. And let me know if you have any questions. Talk to you soon.